Hello everybody, welcome back to another edition of Dale's Rails. I hope everybody's going to enjoy themselves this week with friends and family eating lots of turkey, and that we can all find something to be thankful for. You know, in this episode, it's going to be more of an episode about this old house than it is about train running section, but it is going to be about how I went about building my shelving for my train collection. So in that regard, it is train related. You know, when I started out to do this, I quickly discovered I was going to be building quite a bit of shelving. So I thought this would be a good opportunity to share it with you all. And also when I decided to build this, I kept in mind that it not only was form and function important, but it also had to be in line with the aesthetics of my bar. So I kept that in mind when I was building it, along with something that was easy to build and to install by myself. So hopefully this is coming across as even somebody with my advanced age can do this. Anybody can do it. So it's really not that hard as long as you got the right tools. So with that in mind, please enjoy episode 1. Thanks. Okay, so that's my first cut. I dado all of my uprights for the shelving, and so what I want to do here, we got a 3/4 inch board here, so if I want this to come out, say exactly 6'5", which is what I'm looking to do, then I would cut this board 6'4 1/4", and that's going to allow for 3/8 of an inch for each of the dados on the uprights, so that when I put the end pieces on, it'll bring it right out to 6'5". We'll mark this 6'5", or 6'4 1/4 actually. My project calls for, I'm making my shelving 4 foot overall height. So it's going to call for, I'm spacing about every 5 1/8 of an inch between the shelving. So you'd want to, you're going to need like 9 boards plus the end pieces. These are 8-foot boards, so there is a little extra length on these, so you can cut off the ends to get good square ends to get them exactly 4 foot. So I would be cutting my uprights exactly 4 foot. There's first shelf. I am making 2 6'5" shelf sections. So now that I've got all my shelves cut to length, it's time that to put the grooves in. I use a scrap piece here to have the measurements already figured out. Since I've done shelves before, I already knew what the spacing was, and it works out. If you measure from the fence to the inside of the saw blade here, I'll measure these boards are 1 by 4 by 8. So they're going to measure 3.5. So by measuring from here inside to the edge of the blade 1 inch and 1/8 is what I set this up for. This measurement here works out to approximately 1 inch and 1/8 center to center is ideal. And by doing 1 inch and 1/8 from this inside edge of the fence to the inside of the saw blade, you simply cut, and then you can turn your board in for end and then run it through the other direction by just leaving the fence set for both cuts. So this speeds up the process a little bit, and then you will end up getting a precise measurement gap for your wheels. So we'll set up a board here real quick to demonstrate. Okay, before we get ready here to make the cut, I should explain to you, I just set my depth of my blade here to 1/8 of an inch, which is approximately carbide tooth depth. So my saw blade has carbide teeth, and I just now notice here, oh, that ain't good. I'm missing a carbide tip. You know, that's when you start checking your chest and your face to make sure you don't have something embedded in you that you shouldn't. So I'll have to get that fixed. But we should be fine to go ahead and make the cut. So we'll go ahead and make 2 cuts here, one after the other. Okay, you probably notice I made 2 passes each, but it is just as simple as run the board through, and then I just simply turn the board around end for end and run the other side through the fence the same setting. This will give you your grooves down the center. We can check that here with an engine real quick. As you see, gives you perfect depth and width of cut. It gives you just enough that you have just a slight play in the trucks, which is what you want. You don't really want those fitting tighter. I don't. I like the extra room, especially after you get the shells finished with the finish on it and everything. It'll make it much slicker and easier to put your engines on the shelf. Figure out what you need as far as depth of cut in here, and generally speaking, when you're dado-ing, it's going to be half the thickness of the wood here. So that's what I'm doing here, setting up now for a 3/8 thickness. You kind of want to make sure you're rotating this around to top dead center so that you make sure it's set to the correct depth all the way around. And so that should give me a good 3/8 inch depth cut right there. So the thing would be to do is actually try this out on a scrap piece. my saw is set up where I can bolt on a spacer so that when I slide my fence over, I've got another piece of wood on here that's radius cut in here, so that when I slide it over, I can get a good flush cut right to the edge of the board here without it damaging the metal fence. So okay, once we have all the adjustments made, it's a good idea to do a test cut on a test piece. So we'll take our piece here, and you notice I've got the wood fence on here that shims this out so that I can flush cut the end of this. Once I have this set, since I'm doing 2 separate shelving units, I can make 4 cuts. Actually, it'll be 8 cuts, so I'll be doing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 cuts each with each setting before I move it for the next cut. So let's go ahead and cut this first one. Okay, so we can take and test. As you can see, we got a good flush cut there, which is what you want, and of course the depth is half the thickness of the 3/4 inch here, so it looks like we're good both ways. With that, we can go ahead and set up and do 4 cuts at once, where we will cut each board this way, flip it in for in, and then make our next cut. We can do that 4 times. You make the 4 cuts now. Doesn't hurt to test these as well. Get a good idea if we're going to get a good fit. Yeah, so that's going to work real good. I've got all 4 end pieces dadoed on the ends. So with that fence set, I was able to do all 4 of these cuts. So now it's time to move the fence, and I can do the next dado cut. I can do those on all 4 pieces. So I like to use a block of wood here that's cut to my 1 5/8 inches. So this would be the spacing. As you can see, I have laid out on this board here already. So by laying this out, I've got this spaced for 5 1/8 inch, and then my next shelf will go here. You got your 5 1/8 inch, and so on and so on. So all the way down until the top here, so that way I get an even spacing between all my shelves. And since this blade does wobble, I like to do it this way simply because I'm never really sure where to set the gauge. I probably had it figured out at one time. I'll actually even take this board here and a scrap piece of 3/4 inch, since I've already got it laid out, and then I can lay these pieces out here on each next successive cut. Keep in mind, this only has to be set up once. So once you've got it set up for the first one, you just simply cut, turn your board and cut. So you're actually making this cut and that cut simultaneously with the fence set where it is. Okay, so we get done here, as you can see, we got all the everything to line up. I would suggest, if you take your time and do what I did and line everything up really good with your blade, you'll get pretty precise cuts to ensure that everything lines up square, so when you put your shelving together, everything will be square and plumb. The only one, if you don't really take your time, your ends, everything but the center shelf, you shouldn't have a trouble lining up. So the only one that could be off is the center one. So all you'd want to do is just keep flipping your boards around until you get everything to line up perfectly, in case you are off a little bit one way or another, because you can ensure these pieces here are always going to be lined up. So as you can see, just flipping that around made a difference. So if I flip this around this direction, everything will get to be lined up. And you may want to not only flip them end to end, but also flip side to side over. Like flip this side to that side. So as it looks right here, these are a good match here. So I'll just make sure that you get a pencil here and mark these right away. So this would be you just put any mark on it here. If you put all your marks at the top, then these will line up this way. So here I could do different marks, just so I know that these are the mating surfaces that I want to maintain. A better place to put it is actually in here, because this is not an area that you're going to be sanding or anything like that. So just to ensure that these pieces will always line up without blemishes. And this wood here had pretty, you can see here where we've got this, I'm not sure what they call this, some type of a wood rash pitting. I'm not sure what makes that, but what I'm going to, I will use, I've been using a belt sander for my all my boards so far, just to make quick work of it. The important thing is on a belt sander is make sure that you don't have it trigger locked on when you plug it in. I had an incident in high school in shop class where a teacher was trying to explain that to me, and he promptly ran the belt sander right off the table when he plugged it in. So want to be mindful of that. You got to respect the power tools and be safe around them. The important thing on these, like I said, my tools, including this belt sander, is well over 40 years old. You'll get a lot of life out of it, if you don't abuse your tools. It's one thing if you use them for your home use. Next, it's another thing if you use them for professional use. But when I sand this, I'm going to use very light pressure. You don't want to force it down. There's a reason you have coarseness of sandpaper is to take the material off. So it's best to use, especially when you're using this belt sander, depending on what you're doing, of course, you want to use light pressure. It makes the sander work harder if you're applying a lot of downward force. You're going to get some unusual cupping. You'll get uneven surface. The key to using the belt sander is designed to take off a lot of material quick. So there's a reason there's courses for sandpapers. What you want to do is just use the proper grit of sandpaper to do the work. I'm going to use very light pressure. I don't ever have more than just the weight of the sander. I don't put a lot of weight down on this for two reasons. One, it hard on the sander itself, and two, you'll wear your belt out quicker. So this belt I haven't changed in quite a while. You get a lot of life out of a belt if you don't overwork it. So I'm going to take some of this material off real quick, and we'll see the results. Okay, I did a pretty good job pretty quickly. Another thing that I do, I do go over it with a palm sander, to kind of smooth it out somewhat. To take a hand palm sander here, got very fine sandpaper in that, and then hit that over the top of that as well. Gets it all pretty smooth. Okay, just like that. I mean, another important thing to do when you're doing it, because of these grooves, I just take a piece of sandpaper, strip of sandpaper, and fold it up. You want to place it in these grooves. It's important really to sand these grooves. I will apply pressure to both edges. I'll just go down one side and apply some pressure. This is a fine grit, probably 120 sandpaper. You just go down each groove. This will knock off the sharp edges here, and it'll also keep the wood from splintering. So this is really important. You don't really have to get carried away with doing this. You just kind of want to knock this edge off. You don't want it to be that sharp. It'll also help with your wheels when you set the train on the shelf. This will help clean out the grooves or smooth out the edges so that the wheels will center better. I didn't explain when I made the curves, my blade on my table saw, just my standard blade, it will cut a 1 inch or 1/8 inch wide curve. So, which is plenty wide. So I'll do that. You can kind of see the results here, the difference it's going to make. Take a look here real quick. You can already see the difference, how much smoother, so it helps having the proper tools. I'm not that concerned about having it perfect, but you know, I want to have a good surface here when I get done. You can see some more rash right there. I could probably take more of that out, but I'm not that concerned about it. I mean, you can position boards in key places where this will never be seen. So if this is an upper board, I tend to do that. I'll put the nicer boards, you can see the undersides at the top, and the nicer side you can see on the face. I will put it down lower. So another thing that I would recommend doing, especially when you're sanding your edges here, or your boards, you know, I will sand all this down real good too. I even will use a belt sander on that. I use pretty much a belt sander and everything, since these boards are so rough. Like I said, these are made for construction. As you can see, a belt sander makes pretty quick work of it. On these edges, you know, I like to take my sanding block here and just go right down the edges and knock that sharp edge off. I mean, that edge sharp enough there, unless you want to be able to cut bread or something with it. That is pretty sharp edge, so I like to knock them down. You know, I find it best just to use a palm sander like this, or some type of a hand sander. You don't really need a power sander for this. You're just trying to knock a little bit of that edge down just to make it smooth. I mean, if you really want to, you could round it over, I guess, with a router. But for me, I'm fine with just knocking that edge off. And that's pretty much it for sanding. It's kind of a boring job, but very necessary. It is what the finished product will be. So, and then over here, with the proper tools, we have furniture grade. So it's not that big of a deal to really spend that much time on the sides, because that'll be painted, but the shelves I stain, you know, I want those to have a nice finish on those so that they will stain well. So, you know, I do want the grain to show through and that type of thing. So a lot of these imperfections that you see, once trains are on the shelf, if you've got trains, that many trains to fill the shelves, which I do, you'll never see all that. I mean, all you'll see is a train. Just like this imperfection here, I can put that at the back, probably towards a, you know, middle shelf somewhere. You'll never ever notice that. So it's not that, like I say, it's not that big a deal. There's workarounds for everything, but there's something to be said for, you know, spending some time prepping the wood. I know this is the boring part of it. Fortunately for me, you know, it doesn't bother me that much. I am a guy that likes painting, so to me, it doesn't matter what it is I'm doing. It's all kind of therapy for me, so I kind of enjoy doing it. Next time we talk, hopefully we can get some stain applied to some of this and the finish put on. And the nice thing about doing doing this, you'll see there was a little time spent setting up the saw blade. It really doesn't take that long. It's pretty quick. But since I paint and stain, this allows me to paint this sides here and stain the shelves before assembly. And then you'll see the assemblies real quick. So once it's all painted and stained, I mean, it's just a matter of putting everything together. I mean, there's everything lined up. The nice thing about doing the dados, it also prevents the boards from twisting and that type of thing. So kind of locks everything together. I mean, you get a pretty strong shelf unit without even any screws or glue. So once I start assembling it, I mean, it'll go really quickly.